Welcome to the next video. So right now we're going to cover the filter helper. Filter is really useful one, but of course all of them are. So to get started, as always, let's simply start with an classical JS example that is going to rely heavily on the for loop usage, and then later on we will convert that to ES6 with using this filter helper. So to get started, let's write here a comment indicating that this is a classical JS example, as I usually do. And now let's create an array of some data. So for this task, we're going to create an array of developers. So let's have a var developers equals to an array. This array will contain many different objects, each object representing a single developer. So let's assign every developer a name and a language that they are most comfortable in. So to get started off, let's start with John. Language would be, say, Python. Next, let's have Sally. Let's say that she adores C++ for some reasons. Joking, I like C++ too. Then we'll have Smith, which is more of a JavaScript guy. Then we will have I'm running out of names here. Jason. Jason is a C# fanatic. Next, let's have Jacob. He also likes JavaScript. And let's have Frank, and he likes Elixir. Okay, so now that we have our developers, it's now time to hire them. So the premise is we want to hire JavaScript developers. Go figure. So to do that, let's create a new empty array of potential hires, like this. And now we want, and at the end of everything, for this array to contain every developer that is using JavaScript, so these two. So how can we do that? Well, we can start with a for loop. We can say var I equals 0 as long as I is less than developers.length I++, and then we can simply check whether the current developer language is equal to the one that we're looking for, so to the JavaScript. If so, we want to push that developer to the potential hires array, so developers at I, like this. And now if I come here and I console.log the potential hires, let's see what happens. As always, I'm going to use Node for this, but of course this is in no way bound or restricted to Node. You can use this in any other way that you can. This is just like practical for me, so please don't fret it if you have zero intention in using Node. So I'm going to go Node and then the file name, and we can see here an array of potential hires. So that definitely worked. This is also a great example of why you maybe shouldn't mutate an array, because if you take a look here, if we mutated this one, then we will like lose all of them and we will simply be left with the ones that we want for now. But what if later on agency tells us that we want to hire all the C# guys? Then we would have a problem because we lost all our applicants. Let's now comment out everything and let's do an ES6 example. So ES6 with filter. Okay, so I'm going to copy this because it will take me a while to retype it, but I'm going to turn it into a constant like this, helpers are really similar to one another. So again, we want to iterate through the array of developers, and then there is a function called filter, like any other. Now this filter function of course expects an anonymous function or a so-called iterator function, so let's provide one. This function receives a parameter, and it's usually a good practice to call this with a singular form of the collection you're iterating through. So in this example that will be developer. And now inside of here we need to do something. So how filter works is it will again iterate through an entire array, and every of these objects will get passed to this developer variable that we just put in there, and then we simply need to return whatever criteria that we want, and that will be then pushed into a new array that gets created by this filter function. So we can do return, and then what we want to do, well, we want all developers whose language is JavaScript. So we can say return developer dot language, first I need to spell it, equals JavaScript. So as this filter function will iterate through this array, this will get checked over and over, and whenever this is true, this will pretty much be like this, and then the filter function will return this current element to that array that is creating. If it is false, it will simply skip that. Okay, so now we need to assign the result of .filter to some variable that is going to be an array in the end. So let's create one, potential hires like before, like this. And now let's console.log potential hires. Now I'll come back here and let's simply restart it, and we see the same thing. But this is much clearer than this. We don't have to worry about all the syntax necessary for the for loop, all the semicolons that we can miss from time to time. We also don't have to worry about bounds of this developers array, and it's much neater in the end. And of course, don't forget it, like in every tutorial in this series, let's turn this into an even shorter example. So if you remember, we can turn this into a fat arrow, then we can get rid of this because it is only one parameter, and then because it's a single return statement inside of the fat arrow's function body, we can simply put everything on the same line. And then, as you probably remember, if you watched the previous videos, we can get rid of this part and this part accordingly. So now we have one line that does everything that we wanted. But I don't want to quit this video right now, because we can make a more complicated scenario. So let's do that. So I'm also going to comment out this, and let's put comment here ES6 plus filter complicated example, because it's not really complicated, but it's more involved, and you'll see. I'll copy this array over here, and let's also assign them experience, like years of experience, and the hourly rate. So let's say for John that his years experience is like 1 year, and hourly is like let's say 15, because he's not too confident in it. Let's say Sally has 10 years of experience, and she's overly confident, and she wants to charge like over the top $300 per hour. Smith, on the other hand, is in the middle, so years experience is maybe like 4, and hourly is like 35. The C# guy, years experience like 2, hourly 25. JavaScript Jacob, years experience like 15, hourly like 500, and this Elixir guy, years experience like 1, but Elixir is a fancy language, so let's assign hourly of like 50. At least that's what he hopes for. So with all of that, let's say now our task is to get, okay, I don't want to write that, but get potential developers whose language is JavaScript, they should have more than say 2 years of experience, but their hourly should be less than $100 per hour. This almost looks like one of the physics problems that you get in school. Okay, so language is JavaScript, more than 2 years of experience, but hourly is less than $100 per month. So how can we do that? Well, let's use filter once again. So let's first of all iterate through that array dot filter. I can write a fat arrow function from the start. So let's say that we will get the developer, and then we have that function, anonymous function there, and then we want to return, and then let's go simply step by step. So first of all, developer dot language should equal JavaScript. Okay. Then developer dot years experience should be more than 2. Okay. And then developer hourly should be less than 100. And now we need to store the results of this filter into a new variable that we'll call the array that it returns. So let's create a new array called again potential hires, and let's console log potential hires. So if we think about it, the only object that should be in these potential hires is the Smith, I believe, because years of experience is 4, that's more than 2, and hourly is 35, which is less than 100. So let's test this out, and as you can see, we get the Smith that we wanted to get. So as you can see, like, this is something that you might need to do pretty often, like filter something through a bunch of different criteria. For example, imagine an e-commerce site and someone wants to see all the laptops that have a rating of like 4 stars, but they cost like less than $3,000. So this is how one can use filter to basically get a subset of an array with the met criteria. So this is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed this one and had a laugh with me while building all these developers, and I'll see you in the next one.